Before I can stand up, I have to sit up, and then I can stand up. Then I'm not ready to stand up, right? I have to prepare myself to move. You know, does that mean it's bad that you're in a place where you're not ready to move? Well, you know, it's interesting. Moshe doesn't really talk about that very much. You know, he talks about this notion, really, the martial artist, you know, being in a place where you can move in any direction without hesitation and with equal ease, because you never know where the next attack is coming from. I don't know if you read the word Dune, but there's this, I read the book Dune, but there's this scene in it where Paul Muad'Dib is like, anyways, the hero is, he's standing there with this martial arts teacher in a huge hall, and the martial arts teacher says something about, you know, you have to be careful to stand so that your back isn't to a door or a window. No, he said, you know, be careful to stand so your back isn't to a door. And Paul, who's becoming this great spiritual leader in the book, turns to his teacher and he says, but the universe is full of doors. And that's really the martial arts point of view. You never know where the next attack is coming from. So you always have to be prepared. So this idea of action, of being in a place structurally, right? So that's about your skeleton supporting you. Being in a place so that you can move in any direction equally, that's, you know, a law of the jungle. That's a point of view of the martial artist, always being ready to act. Right? And you know, that's what's optimal. But is this okay? I'm not talking about morally, I'm talking about dynamically. But Moshe actually, I'm trying to remember where he says this. But I don't. But you know, at some point he says, you know, I think it's in the San Francisco training. Because I think it's the only place I remember him saying something like this. You know, when you're perfectly safe, then it's okay. Right? When you're in a situation where you know you won't have to respond, then it's okay to be in a place where you're not ready. You know, as long as you're supported while you're there. You know, if you're there like this, as opposed to like this, well, that makes a difference. But if you're supported, then that's okay. Yeah, but the rest of the time, we have this idea to be ready to act. So, you know, an inefficient position in relationship to movement, that morality, is one in which you're not prepared to act. So there you see a preparatory movement. Also, we can say, you know, is there one initiation or many? You know, and sometimes there's two. You know, in terms of emotion and drama, you know, like being able to move in two directions at the same time, that creates a reaction of people watching it. It usually expresses a feeling as well. And, you know, what we're talking about is a unified initiation. You know, starting somewhere and having the movement spread. Movement can start distally and end up in the center, or it can start in the center and end up at the periphery, right? So that's a distinction when we say proximal or distal. We're making a distinction about initiation. A lot of lessons work with this idea, right? ATM lessons about learning to initiate proximal. 411 in Alexander United, I can't remember the title of it, 441. Just did this with somebody else the other day. Minimal lifting, which is 29. Lesson number 3 in the AY book, fundamental properties of movement. Right? These are all lessons in which you learn to initiate from the center. You know, and then everything gets lighter. So when we're talking about initiation, we're talking about proximal initiation being optimal. Now, why am I telling you that? Well, remember yesterday we talked about whenever we look at somebody, we look at them in relationship to something. And I think as following Christ teachers, we look at how people move in relationship to how we would move if we were moving as well as we could. It'll be foundation. It's a foundation. Do you know what foundation is? Foundation has to do with your relationship to gravity. So foundation is about the relationship of the center of gravity to the base of support. Okay? Center of gravity, I just mean where your weight is. And base of support, I just mean the surfaces that you're resting on. So for instance, everybody is sitting. Everybody's sitting differently. So Linda's sitting on her bottom and on her toes. Right? Right? Rose is sitting just on one leg, and because her legs are crossed, she's not sitting evenly on her pelvis. Margaret's sitting way forward, so she's resting her head on her feet. You can see that by way of her arms through her legs to her feet, rather than her head resting on her back. That's a description of where your weight is in relationship to the surfaces that you're on. Okay? So that when we're talking about foundation, we're really talking about our orientation to gravity. Flow is about the quality of movement, and it refers not to what someone is doing when they move, but to how they are moving. Okay? One way to think about flow is like the musicality or the rhythm of the movement. If you were going to write an accompaniment to this movement, what would it be? That's a way of thinking about the flow. The flow is also, if you're a musician, the flow is all the things you write above the notes. Staccato, legato. You can give me about 18 more, can't you? Yeah. So all of those distinctions that we make about how somebody moves, the quality of movement. In particular, what we look at as Feldenkrais teachers, when we look at flow, is we look at the smoothness or the continuity of the movement. Feldenkrais teachers, by and large, all of us talk about flow. All of us notice the flow. It really is front. It's foreground for us. We can make lots of distinctions about flow.